Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, knife design. So recently I got an email from one of the supporters of the channel on Patreon who was curious to know my thoughts about designing knives. So this is going to be sort of a free-form little, just me kind of going through my thoughts about designing knives. This is going to be one of these videos where I'm just talking. I'm not going to be showing a lot of stuff. So before I ever became a knife maker, I was a martial artist, and I did that for quite a long time before I ever got involved in making knives. And I guess, my philosophy of making knives always kind of came out of that direction of how is this going to be used, what's going to be the function. So number one on my hit parade in terms of knife design is how is this thing going to be used? There's sort of a variety of things that you want to look at, but I mean, most of the time, if you're making a knife, it's probably going to be for something that you're interested in. Are you a hunter? Are you in the military, law enforcement, a knife enthusiast, self-defense related guy? There are all kinds of reasons that you might want to have a knife. And so I always say, start with knives that you already use to do that. Look at what might be the flaws with them, things that you'd like to improve, and then kind of use that as your starting point for the knife. So my next point would be to try and think of your knife design as a whole. It's not a blade stuck to a handle, it's a whole thing that's of a piece. And so the visual impression of the knife is going to be, something that you see and boom, you make a judgment on how that thing looks. But a lot of times that sort of sense of elegance or simplicity or completeness is going to be an expression of the fact that you've thought deeply about what the use is. And so there's not going to be a bunch of additional stuff that's gimmicky or, just there to make a visual impression. It's all one thing. So a third point, and this kind of comes out of these first 2 points, is test your designs. I was recently making my video about karambits, and one of the things that that you'll see if you watch that video is that I made actually two there weren't even prototypes, they were just mock-ups. I made sort of a training aid, and I also made one just a total mock-up out of wood. I carried them around and I used them, and I just tried to see how they felt and how they operated in my hand. And so that was my starting point. And if I'm grinding a knife, I'm always, I grind a little bit and then I put it in my hand and feel it and see, okay, how does this feel? Once you get a knife made, then take it out and use it. And often it's really instructive because you think, oh, this is a cool feature, blah, blah, blah. You get out there and you're like, ooh, this, it hurts my hand, or it causes blisters, or it just doesn't cut very well. So once you execute that knife, try it out, make sure that it does what you intended it to do. Okay, point number 4 is be skeptical of your designs. A lot of times when people, they make their first couple or 3 knives, sometimes they're uber critical, they're just like, this sucks and, I'm no good and blah, blah, blah. But kind of another approach is to say, oh, look at this, isn't this great? And whatever you do, that first achievement is great. It's really cool that you achieved it, but be skeptical of it, analyze it, look at it, test it out. And if it doesn't perform the way that, you hoped that it would, keep using that to improve your designs. I mean, I never make a design and say, oh, done, I'm happy, I quit, it's never going to be improved. I always want that next design to reflect the shortcomings of the previous design and to improve on them. So I recommend that you try lots of things. Try other people's knives, buy cheap knives and use them. Take your knives and test them back to back. The more that you're able to compare this knife against that knife against the next knife, the more that you're able to draw valid conclusions about what's good and what's bad about your design. So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I want to make this really specific. I really believe that you want to feel a knife in your hands. Carry it around, hold it in your hand, try doing different tasks with it. The actual feel of that knife is going to help you sell knives. It's great when they look cool, but if people pick them up and something digs into their hand or just doesn't feel right, they're probably not going to like that knife. They're not going to buy it. So this is something that's sort of a peculiarity of mine anyway. I'm sure there are other guys who work this way, but I don't work that much off of paper. I mean, I may make designs on paper. It's not that I can't draw. It's just that when the rubber meets the road, you have to feel that thing. Like I was saying earlier, the feel of it in your hands is important. And so I'll typically draw something, kind of do a rough little sketch of whatever it was that that I executed on paper, take that to the grinder, and then start grinding the thing. And I don't try and rush through it and get it done super fast, or I don't try and make it exactly the way that I designed it on paper. Again, I'm feeling it in my hand, I'm testing it out even while I'm grinding it. If it's a little too long, I'll shorten it up. If a notch for the finger doesn't seem deep enough, or it's too thin or too wide or whatever, I'll just keep adjusting. And that way, the prototype, I don't have to execute something exactly the way I planned it, take it out, spend a whole bunch of time finishing it, and then go like, I hate the way this thing feels. So my next point is always think about manufacturability. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty common for custom knife makers to get approached by folks who want to commission a knife, and they'll say, here's a drawing, or a sketch, or here's what I have in mind. And it's not unusual for people to have kind of a firm idea of what they think would look cool, or whatever. But the problem with designs on paper is that often executing that design on a belt grinder, going through the steps of making that thing, pinning the handle, all these little nuances actually take sometimes a whole bunch of extra time, or, almost make something impossible to make. So you as a knife maker always want to be thinking up front, okay, what's going to make this design easier to execute? Is this nifty little feature something that's going to take 2 hours to do, or 6 hours to do, or whatever? If that's true, and if you price your knife based on the number of hours that you put into it, all of a sudden this little hunting knife or something is taking you 15 hours to do, and if you price your time out, it's suddenly become a knife that's so expensive or so difficult to make that it's hardly even worth the effort. Okay, so this is just a last general point. People come into knife making from all kinds of different backgrounds. Some people have studied jewelry or design or art or whatever. Some people were machinists. Some people were, in law enforcement or soldiers or hunters, or, some people just love knives. Whatever background you bring, you want to keep educating your eye, your design sense, especially, if you're somebody who doesn't have an extensive art background or whatever. Recognize that designing knives is art. There's a craft aspect to this, which is, just making things that are effective. But recognize that people respond emotionally to even the most, simple, cheap little knife. They're responding to it aesthetically. They're responding to it artistically. How does it look? How does the appearance of this thing make me feel? Is it beautiful? And that's something that you train yourself over time. I mean, some people are naturals. Some people just naturally know how to make things look nice. But most of us don't. Most of us have to work at that. So I really encourage people to, look at products of industrial design, cars, iPhones, coffee mugs, anything that somebody had to sit around and think, okay, how am I going to make this mass-produced product appealing to the eye and functional? So the more that you study the way that other folks have solved, artistic problems or craft problems or industrial design problems, the more that you're training your eye to execute knives in a way that people are going to respond to positively and emotionally. All right, so, that's just my little 2 cents on this subject. The thing about design is it's really personal. It's interesting. I was reading an article in one of the gun magazines by Travis Haley, who, if you're a gun dude, you probably know who Travis Haley is. He was one of the founders of Magpul Industries and, special ops type guy, sniper, and so on and so forth, and a big gun training guy. And he was writing about something kind of tactical, but as he sort of wormed his way through the article, what he came around to was that you as a potential combatant need to be introspective about what your character is, about what your capabilities are, about what you would be willing to do under certain circumstances, and that everything that you do in your training is going to be dependent on that sense of yourself. And so at the end of the day, design is personal. Design is about who you are and expressing who you are. I'm not really talking about, something super deep here. I'm just talking about, what do you like? What's cool to you? Try and train that sense of your own aesthetic and your own sense of, who you are and what you're trying to accomplish when you make a knife. I'm not trying to make this too grandiose. I'm just saying that the more that you, think about what it is that you're trying to do and can kind of articulate, hey, this is what I'm aiming for, the better those knives are going to be. Hey guys, if you found value in this video, I hope you'll consider partnering with the channel to help us bring more videos, better videos, more knives, more techniques, all that cool stuff. Click the link to Patreon to help this channel. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, bro, what are you waiting on? And check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Also, if you're into Japanese swords, check out my website, waltersorrellsblades.com, where you'll see more of my work and where you'll find videos about the making of Japanese swords, along with mounting, fittings, polishing, hamones, all kinds of good stuff. Now, more videos.